All right, now this is just a disclaimer here, and that this is called improv, so it's building up a comedy routine that I'm working on because it's a way of dealing through trauma, and it's a way of looking at the funnier side of life sometimes, especially when things are extremely dark. And so it's a theater performance. So take everything said here with a grain of salt. This is not the opinion of the establishment. This is not something that should be misinterpreted by anyone. Because if it's based on historical figures, it's very loosely based. So any associations that you might make with people living or dead is just part of the routine. Because this is an experimental thing. I mean, this is obviously not a production grade studio. This is just my point of view. So if it is beneficial to you, if it's entertaining for you, if you do find value in it, I'm greatly satisfied knowing that somewhere, like, again, audiences are rare. Some people don't like comedy. Some people hate real comedy. Some people just they want to shut down venues just left and right because they don't like how jokes are told. So this could get canceled. Okay, that happens. It's happened to much funnier people than me. Believe me, I'm not even close to funny. So if you feel you're getting bored halfway in, if you need to just tap out and listen to some classical music instead, do it. Don't let me work yourself up in any way because I'm working through these issues, which is why it's improv comedy. Now back to the program. Welcome back to improv comedy. All about improv, all about comedy, all the time. I was thinking the other day about how comedy can be made, how I'm working through this improv is because a lot of times life, especially if you get into conceptuality, if you take things to extremes, if you make things worse than they are, it really is it can become very condensed. But comedy is a way of like adding acetone or adding a little bit of gasoline to. Have you ever worked with oil paints that are very dry, very sludgy? Well, it's sort of like that. So if you keep pouring in a little bit of gasoline, a little bit of acetone, start swirling it around on your brush of description, you can then start painting funny faces and not just funny faces. You can start painting landscapes. You can start also thinking about what you're focusing on. Are you focusing on aggravating things? Well, if you are, that's not necessarily super normal. That's really normal. In fact, if you obsess about these aggravating things, then you're subnormal. So congratulations, you've reached subnormalcy. But if you can turn these agitating things into something it's somewhat humorous, and then also letting them go, like using it as a form of purification or expertation, that you purge these things from your mind a little bit, or at least find some angle that is just slightly amusing, even though these are many times massively negative times, occurrences, the difference between expectations and what is being delivered. It just seems like we had a lot of high expectations about civilization and politics and all these other things, and the realities are like, whoa, like not even, it wasn't even on the chart of what we thought was possible. And it's like each day it just is like the you hit the trap door in the basement and there's another staircase and it just keeps going. So at some point, if you can put on your spelunker hat and you can manage your torch. I like how the English say that, their torch. They get their torch going. And you get a few canaries in cages around you, then you can start getting into spelunking into the depths of civilizational disappointment, for example. Yeah, it's a modern phenomenon, right? I think Nietzsche, for example, is a famous case. Someone who set up out with a lot of high hopes and ended up with a lot of just crushing disappointments. But that's not skillful. It's not. It's like shooting yourself in the foot. It's not funny. It's like somebody else will laugh. Somebody will laugh at you. I mean, you might be able to laugh at yourself, but if it hurts, it's not really funny. So this helps me, for example, look into like UK politics at this time because it's for me it's a diversion. It's a diversion from other places that I've identified myself more with. So it's a diversion into their version of lunacy on a political level like this. That it's similar but different. They have these people calling themselves Conservative Party, the Tories. They're absolutely, they're not conservative at all. It's like an absolute lie. Then there's different versions. We're conserving a model of self-enrichment here while lying to the public, and that's our shtick. We're conservatives, so we want to keep this tradition going on and on and on and on. Because it's really working for me, and that's it. If you don't believe it, well, I don't have to be funny. I'm in politics. I'm getting paid to cancel comedians and the culture and put cronies in the BBC. And it's really amazing how far the UK has fallen on a cultural level. Because there's also this misperception, I guess, to the bumpkins in New Zealand or Australia or the US or other former colonies that the UK has this veneer of sophistication or civility. And if you start looking into how they present themselves, it's just really, 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 really beyond degrading how stupefied their political and economic system is. I mean, it's horrifying. And it's on TV. It's like you could just click on channel, this channel, that channel, and you'll just see these people. So they don't have anything even resembling conservatism that are calling themselves conservatives. And then you've got the Labor Party that doesn't care about labor at all. So, whoa, what a choice do you have? That's right. It's a democracy. So you have, or what would they call them? Parliamentary? They have a name for it. Parliamentary democracy. However they want to call it. No choice. A lot of frauds. And really just vicious frauds, like vicious liars, like people that get sadistic in their lives. Like they get in and start talking about how they care about culture and they care about the economy. And these people don't give a damn. Like if they could take it, put it in a pile, pour gas on it and set it on fire, they would. And like find some dirty boots that they could just stamp on it. That's about how much they care about the culture or integrity. This is the other thing. Like they have these groups in Germany now that care so much for the climate that they glue using like some type of poly glue their hands onto cars in the pavement. Some type of like chemically disastrous, toxic type of epoxy glue. During like rush hour traffic, you'll have like 5 or 6 of these people that have been put through some type of psychological torture method that's socially accepted and funded to the tune of millions of dollars. So they'll glue themselves, young people that they've agitated into thinking that this is a life or death issue, glue themselves to like workmen's vans at like 7:30 in the morning during rush hour, so that the co-ops need to be called in to then like try to use things like dental floss to, because of course they won't want to hurt these people who are hurting themselves and hurting their entire society, but they think they're saving the planet. Okay, so these things are going on. Like these are happening. These are daily occurrences in the modern, liberal, tolerant West. Then on top of that, they're poisoning. What is it? Human rights activists, like real ones. How about this Russian oppositionist? 2 people poisoned in Berlin last week. Oh, and then taxes just keep going up like this. Taxes are very important. Job opportunities like disappearing. You can work, but you can't make enough to pay for the cost of living. A gigantic part of that is rent in some form or another, which is related to the property market, which is basically a modern plantation where these people just done you for living and cartel-like overinflate the prices of property on a massive scale so they can profit from the interest of inflated asset class. But then on top of that, you have like these politicians that decide, oh, we're going to privatize public assets. So they privatize things that work, like the water system in London. They privatize that. Then they take out gigantic loans on their assets. Then they raise the prices, and then they don't invest anything in the infrastructure, so that when there's a storm water or overflow, all of the sewage goes into all of the water tributaries in like a massive area, just destroying the environment, while they skim off the dividends to who knows, global players, international tyrannical operations, probably the Russian. I wouldn't be surprised. 20%, 20% of Russian oligarchs. Then you got the Chinese sitting there too. So we're talking about global criminality, like global organized crime. So, but then you just have to think like how subnormal these people are that would do something like that, and that they're tolerated. They're the political establishment. And wow, it's just really shocking. See, nobody in modernity thought that modernity would turn out this bad, like this. Unbelievably bad. And yet, if I look back, there's some drawings of like British politicians, and I think it's always been just pretty ruthlessly a rip-off scheme there. It's just that they haven't really been able to rip off this many people all at the same time in this type of on this type of industrial scale. It's definitely getting worse. So I'm if we're going to try to classify this um, if we take, I always like looking at the 1,000 meter view, like go up 1,000 meters or and look at this. What they're doing is just like impoverishing the general population and making political change impossible via the institutions. And so that's why this is really, it's a comedic type of time. As the results might be tragic, but it's a comedic process. So how will it end? Well, this is why humanity sort of has its ups and downs, because ultimately you would think like a mob, this will create a mob of people. Now, I guess if that mob did not have access to cheap drugs like fentanyl that they're passing out like Pez on the West Coast right now. By the way, the doses are all wonky. So you have these people that mix it to various degrees, and if you even have like a millimeter more than you need, your heart will stop. You know, fentanyl is no joke. It's used in surgical procedures to knock you out, but it requires an anesthesiologist to make sure the dose is precise. And when you got street hustlers and maybe, who knows, military-minded people that are deliberately manipulating the doses so that 5 are normal but 1 isn't, but these people take 6 in the course of a week, so they're dead in the course of a week, something like that. Talking about over 100,000 deaths per year since I don't know when. People, it's considered a news story every other month or so, but people putting 2 and 2 together doesn't. That's not what the political forum there is there for today. Today, it's basically people, again, proxies put there by we just have to assume financial interests that are not in the public interest. So it's very simple. And you can go to places like Pakistan and see the same thing happening in just a different form. They have different representatives, different geography, same shakedown scheme with, of course, they're different. They're on a different sliding scale. So maybe it was a livable place in like 1967, and now this process of a mass impoverishment is much further along. And then again, what type of civilizational condition do you have? Is just this, like, at some point basic survival becomes very difficult, I would imagine. Not very many things working, etc., etc. So being alive during times like this, it's, again, you gotta mix those paints to paint something that works. And again, we like to think we're so special, but think back to the warring period in Japan or China. You had philosophers, you had magistrates, you had all different types of people just trying to get through this type of madness. And it is madness that moves the world. It's the madness of these personalities that are mad, the madness of greed, ill will, and delusion. On a mass scale, how could it not be if these are not the hindrances of humanity? Why wouldn't they be the hindrances of civilization too? So you could have mass outbreaks of greed, ill will, and delusion, and guess what? The result's going to be a lot of dissatisfaction. That's basically it. That's the 1,000-yard view. And so However much you're involved with that, well, that's your karma, right? That's your karma. And if you're a skillful person, you're going to be able to get yourself uh, out of the subnormalcy of being just catastrophically disappointed with what the culture has become. Again, this is something you identify with, you hold on to it, your culture. Doesn't belong to you. You have your culture. What you're skillful enough to create within yourself and propagate, that's what you have. If you have disappointment, that's what you have. If you don't have disappointment, if you have satisfaction instead, despite a lot of disappointments, well, then you have satisfaction. Which is the more skillful person? So, and this is the other thing, these people that have a lot of things, I don't think they're all that satisfied. I mean, how can they be satisfied? This is how they make money, lying to people, creating more, just more and more and more and more and more and more disappointment. So why envying people like that? Don't ever do that. These people, also the comic results that these people are going to get because of that, they're not going to see that coming. It's not just hell where these people are going. There's a whole millions of lives that they might be living as like some type of insect, for example, for their misdeeds in this realm. And yet that's their karma, right? So somewhat, it's not something to laugh about, but you could if you wanted to. But in any case, yeah, UK, wow, really disappointing. Nothing on the right, nothing on the left. Oh, but they're still the fifth column's still looking for neo Nazis. Oh yeah, you say anything that might offend somebody there that doesn't want any type of national solidarity happening, you're gonna get canceled. So you gotta be real careful. You gotta you gotta be dancing around like this. Make sure you don't appear to care for people like yourself, or functioning social systems. To make sure that that's not allowed. That is verboten. But seeing the connection between the fifth column and using the term Nazis against Ukrainians, and then seeing these brain dead, useful idiots use the same term in an even more inappropriate setting, such as the Western world outside of Germany, and even within Germany, there hasn't been any Nazis since World War II. Ding! Here, let me knock on your screen. Doot. They're gone. You need a new boogeyman. Figure out a new boogeyman. I guess now you got Putin, right? Which he is a boogeyman, but he knows who's Nazis, so he's using the Nazi thing. So, what are the fifth columnists to do in the West now? Oh, I know. Yeah, they're going after all these other psychological attacks that they try to spin off as being moral. See, these environmentalists that are using, again, very environmentally unsound materials to glue themselves to cars during rush hour. It's the same type of process. They think they're doing the right thing. They think they are the moral people. They're not. They're dupes. So if you and this is, if we go back to the film 1984, if we also go back to Orwell, I don't think Orwell really conveyed this agitory process. When they put up the face of the resistance and everyone had to shout and scream. I think it was a little bit too overboard. The real chilling aspect of that process, especially if you look at mass media, is it's a lot more subtle than that. They have their boogeyman, their boogie ideas. So you can't exclude interlopers, for example. That's against morality. The modern psychological, nihilistic, atheistic, kleptocratic principles, because we say so from the top down. So all you peons better be on board with this new morality, and you better find ferret out and shame all of the people that aren't on board with the new morality of the big bankers on the big plantation. Um, just raising those interest rates, and oh, just general prices. You need £2 billion to buy some shanty in London. That's run by. That's the other thing. The city of London, is it run by the English or the citizens of the UK, or is it an international chop shop for money launderers? It's a question. Got the Cayman Islands here. You got Malta there. You got Cyprus. So what? That's what these people do. That's what they do, and they got a whole lot of farce between that happening and the public. So just imagine how much they don't want public participation, and then just think, how would you create the socio-economic political climate in such a way to exclude people without excluding them physically, excluding them psychologically? How would you do that? Well, just look at how they do that. Look at how the Conservative Party has reinvented itself to being one of the most grotesque apparitions that has ever been witnessed on this planet. And combine that with the Labour Party, and then you've got the same thing. But of course, we've got all of these choices in Western democracies. And the funny thing is yeah, that just leads to what? Incompetence, leads to not being able to do things right, leads to a breakdown in security. That's basically the final rotten planks on your descent into ignominy. So, can it turn around? I think so, but it's not going to really be about engaging these institutions. It's going to just be about pulling the plug, building new institutions that are also decentralized. Like, whatever works for you, start looking for decentralized networks, and start becoming a cultural security specialist yourself. When people start coming with jive, these people are cooked, they're done. Just imagine like two eggs that have been broken over their head and it's been fried. They're fried. They're car gluers, okay? Just on a lot of other different issues. So it's unfortunate, right? It's like people that that are not altogether there on purpose, and they're meant to be dysfunctional. So what does that leave a person of integrity and morals? Well, disengagement, definitely disengagement, but also reorientation, re-engagement with, and also openness to people that do have still some integrity left. And that's been one of the good things to come about during this war, is that you get to see there are people that have integrity. They will fight for freedom. They will not let themselves get rolled over. They will organize when push comes to shove, and they will push back. And there's always a chance for humanity when one of these pushback movements happens, that a lot of the reforms, institutional reforms, can take place, or again, pulling the plug on the institutions, starting over with new ones, and starting from from zero. Maybe I wouldn't take any of the people that have somehow gotten positions via these politicized means. I don't care who you are. I haven't seen any talent in the establishment media that justifies taking any of them. What they do is stink. So their associations stink, their thinking stinks, and so who needs them? But maybe some young people that have a little bit of integrity and a little bit of good luck to develop themselves further in such a way that they can be a benefit to future societies. Well, that's something we can all hope for, and we can also assume that's going to happen anyway, whether or not all reforms happen or not. That this is in some ways the power of human life, the power of life itself. Now, I'm not going to say human, because again, we use these universal terms too much. Let's say that Western values will at some point reassert themselves, so that we think of it more of a dynamic cycle and less of a linear thing. So we're on like gut-wrenching, precipitous decline, but that's just one part of the circle, right? It's like that wheel keeps on rolling. So that's all I've got for you today. I wish it was a lot funnier, but sometimes that tar doesn't mix all that well, or you just don't have enough of the gas to thin it out the way it should. But we'll see. There's always a new story the next day, but it's also not bad if you miss it. Good, bad, who knows. There's some cool things though coming back out in modernity. For example, this last week there was an AI generated photo of the Pentagon blowing up, and it had all these people, like debunkers, had to come out and say it was fake and whatnot. But it really does show the technology. So imagine the TVs of the future, where you can just program in whenever there's a British politician on TV to superimpose a prison jumpsuit over their shiny suits or business attire. And that's the way you should look at these political representatives, as criminals, like, because that's when you see the con. Like, you should visit a prison sometime and see the very normal looking people that inhabit those places. And if you were to look at their profile, you would see all different types of things that are rather quite shocking. You wouldn't have thought to look at the people that they were cons. See, instead of conservatives, you could just call them cons, C-O-N-S, cons, like convicts. So imagine the TVs of the future that could just superimpose. And I imagine, and really you should, this is a mental exercise. Politicians on TV that you suspect were not voted by popular vote because nothing about them is even remotely endearing, remotely charismatic, remotely competent. Type in your AI, put mentally at first, just see them in prison jumpsuits, giving their speeches, giving their statements, things like that. And that will sort of bring you up to speed to our current reality. And again, normal people are very surprised by these things, that these things can happen, because normal people have these assumptions that, for example, the electoral process is working perfectly fine. They don't uh, question it. Why should they question it? The newspapers aren't questioning it. So why would the normal person question? Of course, the electoral system must be working. Or of course, these people have all this money because they were working really, really hard, which is what normal people have to do to get a lot of money. So they can't imagine that they're dealing with criminals. And of course, the criminals don't want to let them in on it. They're not going to say, "Hey, oh, you know what? All this money that I accumulated, it's all due to criminal enterprises." They're not going to do that. Their whole life is about living as a sham amongst moral, hardworking people. Sometimes they think they're better than people for doing that, and sometimes they are probably uh, due for the insane asylum. But they're just always going back and forth between the insane asylum and their own misperceptions of their self-perceived superiority over these people. So, but yeah, the prison jumpsuit AI, I gotta get that on my TV now. I'll just put all politicians, put them in prisoner jumpsuits, and maybe if they say something that's cognizant, that'll I'll be able to overlook it, but at least I know the baseline. So, but oh, the whole other funny story that the Free Russians decided to move into Belograd, which is on the Ukrainian border. They're going to free Russia. How about that? So these are Russians. This is just people that realize that the con, the con game that their country is 20 years of, or more of just a criminal regime. People who yeah, got really into vote manipulation and appearing to be the authorities that pay municipal budgets to have people with guns decide whether or not it was legal, that they incarcerate journalists and people who just hold up like a white piece of paper. That all of a sudden these guys they reached a snapping point where that whole ruse of authority broke down for them in this life. And so the way they see it is that if somebody has a badge and a gun and is willing to shoot people for criminals, that they're criminals themselves, so they picked the wrong job, in other words. And if they got conscripted, well, that's too bad for them. They should have just hit the dirt and ran away when those guys showed up. But of course, it's a power, right? The power of these other guys to get all their resources together and to claim to be the legitimate authorities, and it's the other guys to aim and take cover when the goon squad comes in. And the funny thing is this formula can be applied anywhere. It can be applied to the island nations. It can be applied to other continents, which is to say people who finally realize, well, guess what? This is not a representative government, and who's gonna shoot who? And at that point, it's really up for grabs. So there was an interview, like one of these English guys. The Conservative Party decided to like jam immigration, skyrocket immigration during their tenure, although they came in on an anti-immigration platform. There was this English guy, he said, you know what, this is the global Marxist theory, which is surplus proletariats get sent to bourgeois countries, and they've deemed the UK to be a bourgeois country. Well, what is a bourgeois country? Anywhere where Westerners predominate. So the radicals, the fifth columnists, and the world changers, the utopians, They think that if you're against that in any form, then you become the new bourgeois. You're uh, a Nazi, like a Ukrainian Nazi. You're a neo-Nazi. You're a Nazi wherever you might be because you're against this whole proletariat migration, which of course can't be stopped. There's nobody behind it. It's a natural phenomenon. But if you're against it, then you have to have bourgeois motives for it. So this is the new Marxist fifth column paradigm. So, and it's not just the Russians. Now, the Russians see it cynically. Like, they'll just say, oh, it's Ukrainians who want to have their own country. They're Nazis. The fifth columnist in places like UK is, oh, if you want your country to remain the way it's always been, or perhaps improve it, you're a Nazi. You know, you're against the Conservative Party, so again, you have to think, how hard was it for them to throw this election? How much is organized crime involved in these elections? And how far can organized crime be rooked by geopolitical issues that are beyond its comprehension when it's just looking to make a buck? So, oh, you want me to throw this election like I've done it for the last 30 years? Okay. Well, how much is it going to cost you? And they don't care of like the broader strategic implications of that. Like, these are criminals. So, oops, they don't care, right? And the people, like the people, the representatives of an illegitimate government, they're criminals too, but they're legal criminals. So, but here's the good news. Good news is that all of these policies not only can be stopped, but they can be reversed. So people in the future can say, well, this was an illegitimate government starting in, let's say, 1990. And let's just do a complete review of, how about this, all of the legal, all law that was written after 1990 just gets put into a box, just gets put out of action in one blow. One act decides that it's put in a stinky box that people have to look into it first, but it's no longer in power. And then everyone that came in after 1990, is going to be a review, including family members, everybody else. And if they came in during an illegal regime, they can also go out during a legal regime. And that's just the way legality works. So now, of course, if they can amass proletariat forces to the point where they can stop a popular, let's say, renewal of principles in the country, well, then I guess we're looking at like a Guatemalan or El Salvadorian situation, just on a larger scale this time in a European Western theater, right? So guess it sucks to be you then. But as far as young people, I wouldn't accept it. I don't accept it. And as long as the situation is as stupid as it is as long as it'll be stupid. But that can change. And changing your perception is really the first step. And then realizing, okay, this is absolutely within the realm of possibility that something like this can happen. It's happened in other places. It's happened at unexpected times. Cuba was unexpected. Cuba was great. It was wonderful. You should read Hemingway. It was very successful, very prosperous, great people there. And look at it now. So it can be one of those types of full-on demises into never coming back, perhaps, unless there's an invasion. I mean, if, for example, the U.S. decided that it wanted to rebuild Cuba, it could do it. Be a lot smarter than probably the whole middle Afghanistan adventure. That's funny also with Iraq. I don't even like to mention the word Iraq because I almost puke when I say it, but Not that Saddam wasn't a piece of shit, he was, but all these private companies in Iraq, they're just sending that oil right to China. So when the Indo-Pacific blows up like a big old atomic fireball, I guess those guys are going to have to, find new customers, whoever the hell they are, these international conglomerate of proletarian exporters or shifters. But yeah, they're playing a long game, and it's global now. So what will become of it? Who knows? But they do like to demoralize and with these actions. It's not just lying. It's about displaying control to the point to demoralize the bourgeois from doing anything. But again, these people are not just malfeasant in the extreme, they're also pretty incompetent. So how far can they degrade a country to the point where there's no pushback? These are all theoretical ideas. I mean, certainly in South Africa, that we're looking at a case where you essentially had a European country that is now lost to global organized crime, lost to China, lost to Russia, Russia's export model. Yes or no? Well, who knows? 10 years. Things can change. Things can change. I think if people realize, look, it took a lot of people. Imagine all of the good people coming out of like the 1890s that had to put up with 1917. They were ill prepared mentally. And Westerners are just ill prepared in general. I mean, the Eastern Europeans are doing their Eastern European thing. They don't have these types of horrible problems yet. It's like a stage of decomposition. They have more of the direct military threat. But that can change, and also can change on the Western side. So we're heading, I would say, towards either a period of demise or a period of instability, or again world war, which in that case, again, all of these issues, shall we call them, all these attempts and all these people that caused all these problems, they might just end up in front of a war tribunal. And but that's the risk they took, right? That money was worth it to them. That's the way it can go down. Just like it can go down all the way to Moscow, right? They started in Belograd. What's stopping them? Right? I see it. The thing could just keep growing. Just everybody's like, oh, what? People stop taking the job to be in the goon squad because they got people that know how to take care of things on the other side, who know what they're fighting for. It's not a goon check. So again, these things, they're pretty inspiring to see. And it does show a whole different way of looking at the world. A really modern way, in a way. So there are consequences. There are big consequences to political fraudster. Another thing for Western men, they're so damn comfortable. Like, oh yeah, whatever, I'm not about this or that. When the war happened in Ukraine, guess what? Borders were closed. You couldn't leave the damn country. Everybody had to show up and hump a rifle. So politics does matter, fool. And it's a lot better. It would have been a lot better if a couple of men said, you know what, especially after 2014, let's start looking into defense matters. And I think a couple of them did, but it would have been better if a couple of more of them did. It didn't say, oh, well, I'm trusting the government to take care of that. Because that is an assumption these days no idiot in their right mind should be making. So start reaching out to people. Start decoupling from fools and start plugging into self-reliance networks. Like they'd also know how to survive if the electricity goes out, and knows how to communicate, and starts looking into all these war type problems that citizens have had, and it had to scramble to survive. Because this is another thing, like right now things are looking good for Ukraine, but in a world war scenario, how many divisions of Chinese will get shifted to the European front, which is another thing. Like Finland and the Scandinavian countries, they're just looking at China or at Russia. They need to look at the entire onslaught against the West, because China will use Russia, and then it will take what it can in the East, and then it will continue to push Westerners off this planet, including very comfortable Northern Europeans, including also the English, like that whole big channel body of water there. They don't want any Westerners there. Don't want any Westerners anywhere. That's why if you look at, this is another thing, most Westerners have the basic assumption that their government is trying to work in their best interest. They're not assuming that it's they have imposters that are either wittingly or unwittingly perpetuating exterminationist policy. And see, oh, you're exaggerating. Do you think the fentanyl thing is an exaggeration? Because it's not. 100,000 people per year. That's just one program. You combine, how many people have they let in on small boats that they've organized, by the way, with military and public relations and legal lawfare teams? How many thousands are that? Are those not warlike measures? What would Sun Tzu say to that? Oh, by the way, that's who they read. They don't read whatever bullshit you're reading. Like all of your damn stinky, stupid newspapers and magazines and TV shows and Oprah Winfrey and South Africa and all of that Blarney jazz. They're not reading that. They might be producing what you're reading, but they're not reading that. So what are the Tories? I guess these were sellouts. These are people. These are money people. So if they're like, okay, what do I need to say? What do I need to do? How much do I get paid? Okay, I'll do it. Get that AI working on that prison Josh. What are the colors in the UK? In the US, it's an orange jumper, although they do vary across the country. But in the UK, it'd be funny. Is it the black and white stripes? It would be great to have those options. If one of you programmers out there are interested in doing a collab, do send me a note how we could get that going, because I think that's the only way we Westerners can make money legitimately in this political climate as comedians. You know, certainly as comedians, but probably as programmers too. They'll have us program like, I don't know, cartoons for indigenous people or something like that, as some type of punishment for being so bourgeois, according to their radicalized, revolutionized, inverted, flipped mentality matrix that they're in. We're the bad guys according to them. Oh, sure we are. We're so evil. We're like, oh, we just are plotting against everyone just like they are. See, this shadoic projection is what it's called. This is another thing. They play the victim so that they can attack. Why did they attack Ukraine? Because Ukraine was gonna attack them. What do you think the Americans were doing there? Tourists? This is what one of these lunatics said in a street interview. Check out 1420. This guy does real Russian street interview. The Americans were plotting against. No, shadoic projection. Nobody's plotting against you. Like, seriously. Not until this whole thing, not until the bombs started falling. I mean, at that point, what do you call that? You call that self-defense, don't you? Oh, it's a conspiracy. Well, I hope, some people wake up from that conspiracy. I hope that movement really does get off the ground and really does show us all in the West like where fake um, politics ends. It's nice to see that, you know, every once in a while, because you look at the UK again. I think they want to demoralize at this point because they have that monopoly. But um, again, what will be in 5 years and whether or not these people will be in prison, or and certainly pulling plugs on institutions and redoing how things are done there, all that is possible. It can be done, especially in the context of a world war, which is where things are heading at the moment. Whether these lunatics want it to happen or not, like, are they going to light a candle, like mass candle lighting, to stop the next world war? Because that's probably not gonna help either. So keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. Things are getting crazier by the minute, but do have a laugh. Don't cry. Laugh about it. That's the way to go. Thanks for listening.